No matter how hard I try, I cannot fix a broken relationship if the other side is not fixing it. I cannot change someone. I can educate, I can inform, but that change has to come from within that individual. I've already got you crying.
Yeah.
Look at that. This is what dads do.
Those words meant a lot to me because you really helped me. I want to talk about why you made some decisions that you've made in your life.
Your mother? I know.
That's a good decision.
That was a very good
one of
decision.
the best decisions.
It was
I think.
absolutely one of the best. I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I can be here having this conversation with you. Everything in life is up and down. There's no guarantee that everything's going to work the way you want it to work. But what there is a guarantee of is...
Welcome to the Young Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Malina, and I'm 15 years old. Today, I'm super excited because today's guest has spent over 15 years at Microsoft, and he's influenced over 10,000 people's lives. Today's guest is my dad, and I'm super excited to dive into today's conversation. Hi, Papa. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. How are you, Malina?
I'm amazing. I'm so excited because today's conversation, I think, is going to be full of so many learnings and fun topics to talk about.
I think so. And before we get started, I want to say, as your father, I am absolutely proud of you, of all the work you're doing. You had an idea, a vision, and you didn't know how to navigate through it, but you're like, you know what, let's roll up our sleeves and let's figure it out. So I've had the privilege of being right behind you every step of the way to see how you become this amazing and incredible leader that you are. And that journey has just been so inspiring for me to see you do that.
Thank you.
Wow, look at that. We're 30 seconds in and I've already got you crying.
Yeah.
Look at that. This is what dads do.
Those words meant a lot to me because you really helped me a lot, especially through times when I didn't understand what to do or I was stuck, and you helped me get out through so many things, and it's been incredible because without your help, I don't think I would have been able to get to the stage that I am today. Because I can't, I can't drive. So you wouldn't be able to drive me to your events where I got to learn so much about how you present, how to be confident. And yeah, so we'll leave the emotional stuff aside.
We'll probably come back to that again, I'm
Maybe.
sure.
And we're going to go straight into the actual conversation.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off by going down memory lane. And I want to know about when you were younger, in high school. You've talked about your journey on how you started getting into, I guess, computers. Can you talk about how you got into computers, and I guess what differentiated you from your peers at school? Because to be on this path, I know you have to be a lot of dedication and focus, especially to get to where you are. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So a lot of people that watch either my channels or have talked to me understand that there's a part of my journey that I started with computers at the age of 13. And I got fascinated with them. What they don't know, and this is what I'm going to tell you today, and for the first time, that journey started because my cousin had a computer and he wouldn't let me touch it. And it became, and I was the youngest in the house. He was about 6 years older than I was. He had access to the computer. So me at, say about 12 years old, 11 years old, I was so fascinated with this device. And every time I'd try to use it, he would be supervising. And he'd be like, no, don't do that. You're going to break it. You're going to break it. And they wouldn't let me touch it. It was always, you're going to end up breaking it. Don't touch it. And it bothered me to the core. Mm-hmm. It was like, I want to understand how this thing works, yet no one's letting me do it. So the moment my dad, so at the age of 13, brought that computer home, that's why I went right after it. I never went after a VCR, a watch, or anything else, or a microwave, whatever, you name it. I never opened any of those devices before that moment. So the moment that device came home, I was all over it. And when I took that computer apart, just to see what was inside this amazing thing, because this was the first opportunity I had, not supervised, no one's watching around me, I've got my screwdriver, I can take this thing apart and no one can say anything. It was the first time. So I went right into it. That energy, that love, that passion was all there. And when I put it back together, it didn't work.
Oh.
Yeah. So this device no longer powers on. And this is going back to what, 1993, I think it is. So computers were very expensive back then.
Oh, wow.
And that was like a $4,000 computer at the time, which is probably, given inflation and everything else, it's probably maybe a $7,000 computer now. Given that's how it was, latest and the greatest at the time. Didn't work. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I was shaking. Dad was coming home from work, and I'm like, this is going to be bad. I had the courage to tell my dad. That was, I think, one of the biggest things that I had learned, and this is what I share with you guys. Be open about what has happened, even if it's a mistake, and don't be afraid of it, because that fear will hold you down so much that you will actually suppress yourself. And so I had the courage to tell Dad, this is what's happened. I took this thing apart, and it doesn't work now. Dad looks at it, looks at me, and he says, try again. And that was just one moment. Those words I still remember so well when he said, try again. It was just this new flame just got ignited. Like, wait, I broke this thing, but I've been told I can go back and do this again. It was just phenomenal. So I went back and I said, okay, let me tackle this thing. I ran down the street. One of my friends, he was about 2 years younger than I was. He was very good with computers. And I told him what the problem was. And it was something as simple as there's a cable that goes from the hard drive to the motherboard, and it's called an IDE cable. And that IDE cable, back then, if you put it backwards, nothing worked. So basically, that's what I had done. However, I think I was probably the reason why they designed this little tab on that cable so you couldn't put it backwards the year after. But that didn't exist at the time. So when I put the IDE cable backwards, there was a red light flashing and the computer wouldn't load. That was the biggest thing for me. I'm like, wow, like this is so fascinating. I put one cable the other way and everything works. One cable the wrong way, everything's a disaster. And that's all it took. So for me, that was the moment in getting into computers. And I never looked back. Every single moment afterwards was experimenting, trying new things, understand. And I never had the fear. That fear of breaking that device was gone. And that allowed me to open laptops, hard drives, you name it, anything from a computer, building it, from scratch, motherboards, CPUs, looking at them, and I was just absolutely in love with everything that a computer was.
You can build it from scratch?
Yeah, it's not that hard.
That sounds so cool to
Yeah.
do. Yeah, I mean, you have been able to fix every time when we have to rewire the lights or do the wiring behind the house, you're able to do it without even watching a video or anything. I'm like, how do you do this?
And it's funny you say that because I'm not an electrician. I'm not a plumber, right? I don't fix lawnmowers, but I did, right? The reason I can do all of this is because computers require logic. And when you understand logic, and that's no matter what you're doing in life, if you understand logic and you understand it so well, you know exactly all the steps that are required to solve a problem.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So logically, you understand what are all the steps that are required for something to happen. And once you understand that, it becomes a lot easier to solve any problem.
But then what about I know that sometimes when I have an end result for something, I know that I have the end result, but I guess it's that path or that journey to get to that end result is a little bit, I guess, harder to see than to actually the end product. Like, for example, with the sink, you have to fix it. The end product would be the sink that is fixed. But the steps to get towards that is, I guess, what I struggle with sometimes. And I guess that's where the logic comes in that you have to find.
So I'll break something down to you. You've been to Disneyland. Okay. Yeah, look at the smile on you. Yeah, you've been to Disneyland. Disneyland brings everyone a smile. We know where Disneyland is.
Yes.
We can visualize Disneyland. We can visualize ourselves there. What we can't visualize is our path to get there. Every step that we're going to take, whether we're going to the airport, whether we're getting into a car and driving. So let's say you're going to drive to Disneyland in Florida.
Okay.
You're in Toronto. You know that this is a long drive. We have to do this drive. You cannot visualize and see every step of the way on the highway that you're going to be on. So you go a small amount. If everything is fine, you continue to go small amounts until you get to your destination. Let's say if there's a roadblock, or there's a storm, or there's an accident along the way and the highway is closed. What do?
You have to
You
find
only find
another-
out when you get there,
Mhm.
and then you take another route, and you go around. So you're problem solving.
Okay.
Right? So in any case of any problem, you know what your end result is, but you don't know all the little steps that are going to be involved. But you start taking with the first step. Okay, I think you cannot come in and say, the same Disneyland example, that I'm going to start from, I don't know, Buffalo. You have to start from Toronto because you live in Toronto,
Mhm.
right? So you cannot go from Buffalo and say, I'm going to start my journey from there. And that's what happens with troubleshooting and problem solving. People start from the wrong spots.
Okay, you start right at the beginning.
Yes, start right in the beginning. Understand each of the steps. Well, in the case of the sink problem, well, the water goes from the tap and it goes down the drain.
Mhm.
Well, how far down is it going? Is it getting stuck over here, or is it getting stuck further along? You have to start understanding what are all the components and where things are getting stuck or falling behind.
Okay. And then when we're gonna go back to the high school side.
Yeah.
When you were in high school, like I'm in high school right now, and I feel like I guess that peer pressure. I want to talk about that because you said that you went to a school where there was only one or two people who were a turban in the whole school. How did it actually feel like to just be, I guess, standing out in that way?
Normal, nothing.
Nothing.
Here's what people forget. I can't see that I have a turban on unless I look in the mirror. I can't see myself.
Mhm.
Just like you can't see yourself.
Right.
But you see the world.
Yes.
So I never saw myself as anything different. Whether the world did, whether the people in that school did, was a whole different thing.
Mhm.
But the way I would communicate, the way I would have conversations, I was open, I was approachable, had a smile on my face. No one ever felt or thought that I was different. I never felt that through school. I never felt that through university. I never felt that through at work. Primarily because I was approachable. What other people think of me, it's not my business, right?
Right.
So why am I reluctant or hesitant based on someone else's judgment?
Mhm.
I've got to do something. I've got to do something. I was on student council in high school.
Mhm.
So I went to an all-Jewish school. And one of my other friends, who is also a Sikh, we're friends to this day. We were proud of who we were. We were proud of what we represented. But we understood that we got along with people. And that is absolutely key. If you can't get along with people, it doesn't matter what you look like,
Mhm.
right? People are still going to be, oh, here comes that person again. Or here, it has nothing to do with what they look like. It's how they behave, how they act, and how they treat others.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we are all human, and then it's not about your looks; it's about being generous and kind on the inside, and just being you on the inside.
Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
being yourself. What were some things that you would do like outside of school when it came to like the technology stuff? Did you always be on the computer, or were you just like
Every
would you
opportunity.
take breaks as well, or no?
Yeah, I was, every opportunity I could get, I was on a computer. And I remember, so going back to high school, you asked the question about, what set me apart. We had what we called OAC at the time, Ontario Academic Credit, I think it was. It was basically grade 13. Ontario was the only province that had to go through it, and I was the last graduating class actually of it, and they stopped it from there. So from grade 12 you go into university. You had grade 12, and then you had grade 13, and then you go to university.
Okay.
So I think maybe they just considered we were slow and we needed an extra year. I don't know, but I had that extra year, and for me, when I got into high school, they had a computer club.
Mhm.
And that was from grade 12 onwards, 12 and 13. And it was only for those senior kids. And they had a competition. And that competition was for York region. And memory serves me correctly, I think it was grade 11, 12, and 13. But I was still in grade 10 at the time. And I'm like, I want to be part of this thing. And they're like, no, kid, you can't do this. You can't be a part of this.
Mhm.
And I went back and I said, no, I want to be a part of this thing. And I will prove it to you. So one of the teachers said, okay, come into the lab. We had a small lab of like 8 computers, and we would fight over who gets them. And so I went into the lab, and the professor asked me to, I think he asked me to code something, and I did it within minutes. I was like,
Wow.
here, and it was all self-taught. So he was fascinated by it. So I was the only grade 10 student allowed. I don't know what happened afterwards or not if other kids came in, but that year I was the only one that was permitted to participate in the grade 12 and 13 competition. And
Wow.
we went in, and I mean, we there was over 200 plus schools. We came like 60 something, but for me, it was just like, it was a win. I didn't care about where I ranked. I was like, I'm amongst these amazing, smart kids who are actually building this stuff. And we had to build like I think it was like a poker game or a card game or something. And, it was a sequence of cards that come in, but I was a part of that.
Mhm.
And it's a memory that will never fade me, because that moment I looked around, everyone's like, oh, we came 66th or 65th or whatever have you. I'm like, I couldn't care less. Like, this was incredible. This was like a life-changing experience. And that just got me hooked even more. And just from one thing after another, I just kept on getting hooked on it.
And I think that's one of the best things is when you have the opportunity to go in a room full of people who are more experienced and knowledgeable than you, because there's so much that you can learn from them. And you can also teach in the, like, vice versa. It goes both ways. You can learn and you can also teach, and they can learn from you. During that whole journey, like during your whole life's journey, what were, like, I guess some of the hardest decisions that you had to make?
There was a company I worked for. The CEO and I didn't meet eye to eye because that's just how he was. And I always stood up for people. I always said no to what was wrong, and I said yes to what was right morally. He said something in a meeting, and I disagreed openly with the whole team there,
Mhm.
and he lost it. That how did someone dare speak up? Not how I
But
operate.
then how do you have that confidence, I guess, to, like, even if, like, let's just say you have a bunch of people who oppose of your idea, being like, when you have that, I guess it can cause pressure on people to think that, okay, there's so many, everyone's saying don't do this, and then you're thinking something else, and a lot of people will change it, some people will stick to it. How were you able to stick to those, I guess, what you knew was right?
Listen, like, everything isn't success,
Mhm.
but success comes from failure.
Right.
So if you fail number of times, multiple times, you'll start learning and understanding how things operate or work, and you can build things. And now, it's a lot easier for me to do that even now. But back then, those were decisions that didn't sit well with me. If someone said something that wasn't correct, and not that I had to correct them, but especially if they're blaming others, and we all can be wrong in many aspects, but if they're blaming others, blatantly not taking responsibility or accountability, I've stood up. And so in that same example, I told that CEO he was completely wrong in what his assessment was, and I had the evidence to back it up, and he just didn't like that. So he said, listen, I have evidence that speaks otherwise, and if I find that, I'm going to fire you. And I said, okay, fire me. Like, to the CEO. He could have fired me whenever he wanted to. But he didn't have the evidence because I did. So 2 months, every day, I would walk in and I'd say, hey, did you find that evidence yet? Because I'm still here. Because you don't do that. And then the CFO got involved and I said, listen, like, teacher, how long is it going to go on for? I didn't start it. I've got evidence for something. I'm doing my job. Don't tell me I'm not doing it properly.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not, I'll be the first one to know. I'll know I'm not doing my job properly, and I'll be the first one to tell you that, hey, I can't handle this, or this is beyond what I am. But don't come out and say you're doing this wrong because you're blaming someone else, because ego kicks in. And there was a senior director who's still friends with me till today.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you did the right thing, because he goes, no one's been able to speak up to him, and you were the only one that actually spoke up to him. So you have to have that courage, and you have to have that self-belief, not arrogance, not being egoistic, but self-belief and confidence that I know what I'm talking about. My dad says this all the time. He goes, listen, if there's something I'm not sure about, I'm not touching it. I'm not coming in and blabbing and yapping and saying, hey, this is what it is. But if there's something I'm damn well sure about, you better have all your, research done, because you're up for a fight.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so I've recently, with your coaching that you've been doing, I've seen how you talk to people and you try to extract that, I guess, problem out of them. The way you do it is a very unique way. because you're able to tap into exactly what they're looking for. Even if they don't tell you what their problem is, you're able to find it. And not even just for the others, you've been able to find it in me and my sisters. Like when we need help with something, you know the exact problem. I know even sometimes when you talk to some people, you do at such like an emotional level in some cases that you make people cry. Like guys, my dad's making people cry.
I've made grown men cry. Yeah.
So how do you do it in like such a way?
It's empathy. I have a lot of empathy, and I've always had a lot of empathy. And this is what allows me, in the example I was giving, I stand up for other people. People who can't stand up for themselves, I know what they're feeling inside. I can just sense it, I can feel it, and I don't like that feeling. So how do I help them get over it? So a lot of the times people don't know what they need. They don't know what the problem they're solving for. They don't understand how to get to it. But it's having an open and transparent conversation. We as humans are very reluctant or are afraid of asking questions because we think we're going to offend the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm having conversations with my clients, there are times when I'll say to them, I say, listen, like this is going to go deep. Are you okay with this? Because I don't want to go in and step into something that they're not comfortable with, because that's not empathy at all.
Yeah,
right?
That's the opposite. Like
so I'll go in and ask for their permission and say, are you okay? Because I think we're onto something, but I need to understand something a little bit deeper. Are you okay with this? And they'll be like, yeah, this, let's do it. And then I'll dig deeper. And through that, I will find out, I feel like I'm a therapist at times, but I'll find out what their real problems are, what their challenges are, what their struggles are. And what they're focusing on is all a decoy. It's a cover-up. So when I help them solve the actual root main problem, they're like, wow, like, how did you do that? Because we're trying to live in a life where that problem really doesn't exist. We're like putting it under the carpet, as I say. But when you take it out, you deal with it, you address it, life becomes a lot easier.
One thing I know is I live with you. So I've never ever seen you angry or sad or disappointed. You're like always happy, always grateful. How do you always have that growth mindset? Even though, like, for example, I've dropped the Nintendo once, and I know sometimes parents would be angry, like, how did you drop Nintendo? Or I've dropped things, or I've done things, like little mistakes. You never get angry about it. Instead, you like explain to us, how do you always have a growth mindset with those things?
It's not those things.
It's not?
No. I'm grateful for that I'm alive. I'm grateful that I can be here having this conversation with you. I'm grateful for everything that's around us. Everything in life is up and down. There's no guarantee that everything's going to work the way you want it to work. There's never a guarantee of it. But what there is a guarantee of is how I respond to the things around me. That's my choice. Whether there's a storm outside or not, that's not my choice. If I sit here and bicker and say, oh, it's snowing outside and I can't go outside and I have to go shovel the snow again, of course I'm going to be upset. But if I look at the same thing, it's like, wow, it's snowing, it's beautiful. Okay, got to clean up the driveway. It's a responsibility. We've got to do this, right? Doesn't bother me. And so being accepting of what is happening is the biggest thing you can do. And there's in Sikhism, in Sikhi, there's a term called hukam. Hukam is the command or the reality that we live in or exists. Once we accept that reality and we can't change it, like no matter how hard I try, I cannot stop the snow. Can I?
Can't.
I can't, right? So why are we complaining about it? Why do we sit there and bicker and complain and say, this is what's happening? Or no matter how hard I try, I cannot fix a broken relationship if the other side is not fixing it. I cannot change someone. I can educate, I can inform, I can talk to someone. But that change has to come from within that individual. Happens in classrooms, right? In a classroom, you have a teacher teaching 30, 40 kids. One kid flunks, has no idea what happened, can't explain why. And another kid is at 99% average or 100%. Is it the teacher teaching them or is it the kid learning?
The kid who's learning.
Exactly. If you're tuned out, you're not focused. My dad would always tell me this. He goes, I don't understand. You don't come home, you don't study, yet you get incredible marks. How does that happen? It's because I focused in class. So it's taking the moments, taking the reality, being a part of it, accepting it, appreciating it. You learn.
And now I want to talk about why you made some decisions that you've made in your life.
Uh-oh. This could be a tough one.
No.
Your mother, I know.
That's a good decision.
That was a very good
one of
decision.
the best decisions.
It was
I think.
absolutely one of the best decisions.
That's definitely
Absolutely.
the best.
Hands down. You know, it's not a topic that we're going to get into, but absolutely. I think having the right partner can be a game changer. They undervalue. They go, oh, you know what, I'll just find someone and, you know, I'm miserable with them or whatever it is. But it will absolutely determine how you show up in the world.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Every single day. So put that extra emphasis in who the heck are you going to spend the rest of your life with?
We focus on that way
Yeah,
later.
for you? Whoa,
I'm only
whoa.
15.
Yeah,
way later. Not even a thought.
question. Yeah.
So this was not a conversation that we
No,
ever
35, 40 maybe we'll consider it.
had. Okay.
Just like makeup at 30. Yeah.
The makeup at 30.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But the decisions I want to talk about,
Yeah.
after you became a parent, I know you told me that during the first year when I was born, you weren't able to see me because of your job. You were in person. You were always like, you'd only see me when I'm asleep. You never got to spend time with me. You made that huge switch in saying that I'm not going to let this happen. I need to spend time with my kids, or my child at the time. And you worked from home like this whole time. When I became 6 years old, you started introducing me to coding, right? And then you taught my other two sisters on how to code. Like the other one's 4, she's coding. The other one's 8 when she was coding. How did you know those were the right decisions? Even like when you talk about confidence, doing presentations you make us do all the time. Like coding, I know I absolutely did not like when I started it. And I was like forced every day, like, have to learn this. It'll help you in your future. And I'm grateful for it because it was only recently I realized why I needed it in the future. How did you know that I need these things? Even when it wasn't like, I guess, those popular topics like how AI is right now, like everyone's trying to get them to do.
Well, I mean, coding is an easy one for me, right? Because I have a computer science background. But remember, I started coding when I was 13. That's 1993.
Right.
Right? And if people are not starting coding now, and we're 2025, right? Like there's a little bit of a disconnect. Yes, we've got AI now, and AI can help with that. But if you don't understand what's going on with it, you're still missing out, right?
Yeah.
You're still not catching all of it. But to go to the decisions, I think there's a, you know, you asked a bunch of loaded questions there. I think the decisions I made, and I think one of the challenges people have, they take way too long to make decisions. Okay? Not making a decision is also a decision.
Because you're choosing not to make that decision.
Exactly.
So that's also a decision.
So the answer is no at that time.
Yes.
So if you decide I'm going to move, but I'll think about it later on if I'm going to move or not. You've decided not to move. That's a decision that you made at that moment. I look at that as a decision and say, is that the decision I want or is that not the decision I want? So when I moved, to your point, that first year when you were born, I used to work downtown. We lived in Markham. And I'd be out of the house and you're in the mornings early and you're sleeping. I'd come home, you're sleeping again because I'd come late. And literally the whole year I did not see you. But at about the 8-month mark, I told your mother, I'm like, not living like this. This is not what I want. And going back to having the right partner is absolutely critical. She's like, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know, but we're going to probably pack up and leave if we have to. And she's like, okay, whatever we got to do, we got to do. And she knew how important my role in your life was as well. A lot of people forget that. They forget how much both parents need to be. And I'll answer how I knew this in a moment. But we decided, we packed up, moved to Edmonton. And one of the roles that I had started there, and this is back in 2010 now, was with Microsoft, and it was to be remote. I would go see clients, but I'd be back by 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. I'd be with you guys all the time, right? And so it's what I wanted to do with my life. So it wasn't for you. It was a selfish decision. I wanted to spend time with the kids that I had. I wanted to learn from them. I wanted to grow with them, right? So I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. But why or how did I know this was it? We as humans are very complex. And we've made things complex and we've forgotten what our roots are. If you look at every animal out there, what does an animal do? Does it give birth? Like, does a dog, give birth to a puppy and then just leaves it?
No.
What does it do? It
It
nurtures it.
nurtures
It
it and
protects
then
it. It stays with it. Why aren't we doing that as humans? We think we're going to send the kid to school and they're going to be protected and they're taken care of. It's not how it works, right? The school is a system that's designed to educate and prepare. Sure, great. It doesn't teach them about love. It doesn't teach them about respect the same way. Not nowadays, right?
Especially not nowadays.
Not nowadays. Teachers are afraid of kids.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, we were afraid of teachers.
That's the opposite.
Right? Because we had a level of respect. There was authority. That's all gone. These roles, who else is going to play that? Am I going to let society play that role, or am I going to play that role?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't agree with what society is doing in a lot of aspects, then I have to play that role. So I became deliberate. Your mother became deliberate in terms of how do we raise you and your sisters.
I think you've done a really good job in raising us as well.
Thank you. I think so too. I think you guys are doing phenomenal. Absolutely. I'm absolutely proud of what you guys are doing. And it's not to say, we're in a podcast or a recording. You guys are very different than the average kid out there. And it's not and people think, oh, you got a genius child. It has nothing to do with having a genius child on your hands. It has everything to do with what you present them with. I remember when you did your first LinkedIn post, you were probably 9 or 10, and it was that AI post that you did where
the COVID one.
Not the COVID one. It was the AI video tutorial that you did.
Oh, that was
yeah. And I remember I got a comment from someone and saying, "Let them be kids. Why are you teaching them AI?" Yes, I don't let people decide what's right or wrong. If they don't have that knowledge or background or education to teach their kids the right tools for them to be successful, which is my role as a father to make sure that you are successful, then that's not my fault that they can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. So when I shared that, I responded back to the individual and said, listen, what makes you think that she doesn't play with toys? What makes you think that she doesn't play with games? What makes you think that she doesn't have, friends that she goes and talks to and runs around with in the park on swings? This is just another element of education that I've added.
I know. I did everything. I remember, we'd go. It was COVID that time as well, so it'd be online in class, and then I would have time to talk to my friends after class. We'd be on a video call and talk with each other, and then I would play with my sister, eat lots of snacks, and watch lots of TV. And then do a little bit of learning and homework after. And Absolutely. It was like the perfect balance. And that's what I do now as well. Except now that I'm older, there's so much more work to get done. But yeah, I guess it's important to understand that it's not about being gifted or given those knowledge. It's about actually doing it yourself. For example, when I had to first start high school, so for those who don't know, I'm in grade 10 now. When I had to first start high school, everyone was taking the geography classes for grade 9 or the grade 10 civics class because it's only half a credit. And they're like, okay, it's just easy. Let's just get it over with. You had said that, why don't you just do the grade 9 one for math? He's like, why don't you get grade 9 math over with so you can do something else? So you don't waste your whole summer just, playing around, but at least keep yourself busy and learn some new tricks at the same time. And that's what I did. So I had to go, and that was, I guess, the first time that I actually did proper deep work, because at school, it's like you do your schoolwork and you get no homework after. And the homework I've ever gotten was from my parents, from you and Mama, who have helped me, I guess, gain those extra skills I needed. When I had to go through that journey of learning the grade 9 math, when I was just finishing up grade 8, it was hard. I remember that. I had to work 6 hours a day trying to get 5 months of grade 9 work done in 1 month. And I remember how tough it was. I was doing equations in my sleep, y Absolutely. Equals mx plus b. What is this? And it's in my sleep. But then that's when I realized the importance of having that knowledge, and not just knowledge, but having that practice of doing that work as well, and just getting ready for high school before it was already there. Because a lot of people want to go through the easy route. And one thing I know is, Papa, you've never let me go down the easy route. You make me work because you know that in life, there is no easy route. You have to go through the stuff. There will be some things that are easy in some places, but it's cheat codes that you just can't use sometimes. And you have to always, I guess, go through that journey to get to where you want to be. It's about learning those skills and that knowledge that you want to learn to help yourself grow. And now I'm doing, for example, this podcast. it's not something easy to do for everybody. You can't. Not everyone's able to go up on camera, and it was hard for me as well the first time.
I remember.
Struggling.
You were crying before your first recording.
I was.
You were. You want our stories? We got stories.
Oh God.
But you were scared. You were nervous. You were crying because you're like, what did I get myself into?
Yep.
You were shaking.
Yes, I do remember.
Remember that?
A little, yeah.
Right. But I mean, you weren't crying as in you're crying, out loud. Like you had tears. You're like, this is gonna be hard. But I'll tell you something. You talked about nothing's gonna be easy in life. I don't see it that way. Everything's easy.
Mm-hmm.
I see everything as being easy. And people tell me that you oversimplify everything. No, like it's easy. It's a problem that we have to solve. The problem might be challenging, but life is easy. It's a perception, right? I gave you the same example. If everyone's complaining about the snow outside and I'm like, yeah, this is great, we're going to enjoy it, right? That is easy to me. It's just something I have to do now. I have to plan around it. There are times when things happen, and if those things you cannot control, is it hard or easy? What difference does it make? When someone's car breaks down, they start cursing, they start swearing, all of that. I remember when I was in university, within a span of 3 years, I got into 4 accidents. Really weird. 4 accidents, and every time I'm either stopped at a red light, someone hits me from behind, I'm stopped at, I'm driving and someone else comes hits me from, like 4 times I got hit from behind. There was a school bus with the stop sign out, I'm stopped, and someone comes, hits from behind. So 4 times within a matter of 2 or 3 years. And I remember one of my friends said to me, he goes, TJ, that car is so bad luck for you. Like that car is so unlucky for you. You should get rid of it. And I said, are you crazy? That car saved me 4 times. I walked out every single time without a scratch. It's all perception. That accident, whether I was in that car or a different car, probably would have happened. Who knows what the situation would have been? Why are we putting everything towards external aspects of it when internally you're not happy? Things are difficult because we're not happy inside. When you're happy inside, everything's easy. Things happen. They're going to happen. It's expected. It's normal. This is life.
This is why I love you. You explain things in like such a good way that it just makes everything like so easy to understand.
But that's the reality. There are things that I cannot control. I remember one of my managers. This is in 2012, I think it was. Khalil Alfar, amazing guy. I remember something had happened. I went to him and I said, Khalil, there's a situation. I'm trying to deal with this. And remember, the business I was running and the business I was a part of was all negative. Everything was negative. Every time a customer would call you, there's a problem. Every time. There's an outage, there's a breakage, something's happened, technology's malfunctioned, whatever it's always negative. It never bothered me. Never bothered me. And I remember Khalil says to me, he goes, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade. Right? It's like, if I'm going to take these situations and just be sad about them, or, hey, there's an opportunity, something to do here. Love it. Right? So from a career perspective, every time I was brought into a role, it was always to fix something that someone else had broke. It was interesting. It was a mess. Someone had created. And they're like, we need you to come in and fix this. We need you to come do this. Right? So I had a positive outlook on it. To me, everything as such was an opportunity. It wasn't that it's a problem or how am I going to do it? No. We'll figure it out. Roll up our sleeves. Let's understand what it is and figure it out. And that's what makes life easy.
That's a good
Your
point.
perception. That's it.
That's a good point because I remember I was watching a video the other day. There was this person who actually fell asleep during his math class. I don't know, it was like university or something. Okay. I don't know. Maybe his teacher was boring or something. But
I've done that.
You have?
Yes. Yes, we had a lecture, 3-hour lecture. And
3 hours?
Oh yeah, we used to have a 3-hour lecture. I'll let you finish your statement, but we had a 3-hour lecture, and my best friend and I in university would go to the gym right before it. It was lunch. We'd have a quick snack. We'd go work out for a good 60 minutes, and then we'd come to class. We were exhausted. Literally, we would fall asleep in that class. So yes, I understand that video you're talking about.
Okay, but he had fallen asleep, and when he woke up, he saw like a huge equation on the board. Everyone was out of the class, and what happened was he goes home, he takes a photo of the equation, he does it, and he solves it. what he didn't realize was that was actually the world's hardest equation that hasn't been solved yet. And I guess the main point of the story was, if you hear the fact that it's already been unsolved, your brain's gonna automatically think negative. Okay, it's been solved. I'm a normal person. I can't do it. He didn't hear any of that. All he thought was it was homework. So he thought it was homework, and he ended up solving the world's
Brilliant.
hardest math question.
Brilliant. And I love how you share that, because everything we hear on the news. I don't watch the news, by the way,
Yeah, I know that.
as you know, right? I guess I'll let you guys know. I don't watch the news, by the way, and it's because everything's negative.
Mhm.
And those are some of the concerns I have, and I'll tell you that about AI in a moment. But everything we hear around us is, oh, I can't do this, or I can't do that, and this is hard, and this is difficult. Well, that's everyone else. Don't let them infect you, right? Those thoughts, those feelings are contagious. So one of the things I do, you asked why I'm always smiling and all, it's because I want that smile to be contagious. I want people who are having a hard day, a rough day, to not go through that. This was transformative for me when I was about, I think it was about 15, about your age. And I was coming home from school, walking, and actually, no, I was probably younger. I was probably grade 8 at the time, so just about 14, I would say. And I came home from school, and everyone's walking, and you kind of, now everyone's in their cell phones, but back then everyone just walk, and they're talking to your friends, or you had a Walkman or headphones on or something. And the next morning, I see an article, and there was a kid, probably 11 or 12 years old, who committed suicide.
Oh.
And he did it because he was bullied at school. At that moment, I was thinking the whole time, I was like, what was that kid's journey from school to go home, that walk? How miserable. Must have been crying the whole way. What if that one person on the sidewalk walking along saw him and said, hey, you okay? It's fine. Right? And just took a moment to smile. And maybe that smile could have been contagious enough for that kid to understand that maybe the entire world isn't bad. Maybe everyone isn't bad here. And that could have changed everything for him. And that story has stuck with me. That moment stuck with me. And I made it a commitment. And that's why you'll see me. I'll always hold doors. I don't care how many steps behind someone else is. You've seen that as well. If there's 6 people going, I'll hold it for all of them. You don't know what people are going through. Everyone has a problem. Everyone has a struggle. Everyone has a challenge. And if that one smile, that one kind gesture can change someone's life, it's worth every bit of it.
Yeah.
So when we look at people thinking life is tough and hard, sure it is. It's their perception of it. It's a beautiful opportunity. We're waking up every morning. We're healthy. We have the ability to have a job. We can go to work. We can record videos like this, right? So what are we upset about?
Nothing. It's just little things that people put and make it bigger in their head.
Absolutely.
And that's all it is.
Everything's in our head.
Everything is in our head. You've explained that to me. Yeah. Little things, it just gets bigger in your head because when you overthink about stuff. And that's what's important to, speaking to someone is also very important.
Huge.
My biggest person that I talk to all the time is you and Mama. Because if I ever feel like everyone has those days, like where you just feel down, you don't feel like doing something. And the first person I tell is Mom, Papa, saying that I don't feel like doing work today. I feel a little sad or I feel a little tired. And they help me. And then the next day I'm like, whoa, crazy.
Of course, we have it. But we have to learn how to control that.
Yes.
We have to learn how to identify what's causing it. And once you do, there's a term I started, it's been a part of Sikhism for a long time, but I started using and living by last year, because after I left my career, there was a lot of questions of what's next and how am I going to do it and how am I going to make things happen. The biggest thing I had to look at was I chose a theme or a word for the year, and that word is Chardikala, which means to remain in rising spirits all the time. And I'm like, well, this is something I do all the time anyway, but now I'm going to make it a baseline. So anytime there's a problem, sure, bring it. Let's go.
What about for this year then? What's your, Main theme for this year.
Be unstoppable.
Be unstoppable.
That's it. It's be unstoppable. Because I hit the baseline of Chardi Kala to stay in rising spirits. I'm always there. Now it's how do you take it to the next level?
And you put it all together.
Put it all together.
You become mega unstoppable.
Mega unstoppable.
Mine for this year so far is to become 1% better than yesterday.
Yeah.
That line you told me. And every day the thing is, even if I don't feel like doing work, I'm just like, just 1%, just a small thing. Even if it's one extra page to read, or if it's one extra push-up, or one extra video, or one extra hour, whatever it is, just be 1% better than the day before. And I think it's helped me so much. This 2025 has started off with in such an amazing way.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Now we're going to go into the mystery question.
Uh-oh.
The mystery question from our previous guest is, who has been your biggest mentor, and how have they helped you achieve to become to the place that you are today?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who asked that question, by the way?
You can't know that.
Oh, come on. No, that's a very good question. And it's interesting how we look at mentors. We think we need one mentor and they're going to have all the answers that we need, and then I'm going to be, get to whatever. I've never looked at it that way. So one of the things that I've done, I used to call myself and consider myself a sponge as I was growing up.
You call us that?
Yeah, I call you guys. You guys are sponges, right? You guys absorb all that knowledge and information. But one thing I did very interesting was, one of the mentors for me was a guy who got fired before I took his role. You see how weird that is?
Yeah.
It was a mentor because I asked our boss, or my boss at the time, what are all the things that guy did wrong that I should not do?
Oh.
And she said, he did this, he did this, he did this, and that's not acceptable. And I committed to myself that I will never make those mistakes. So I learned from him. He became a mentor. You understand?
Does he know that he was a mentor to you, or was
not
it
at all.
indirectly
Not
he
at
just
all.
became a mentor?
Not at all. So he's not really a mentor per se, but mentor is someone you learn something from. That's what a mentor is.
Right.
Right? So I never had one mentor per se. I looked at opportunities. So saying I was a sponge, I would look at things and say, that person did it this way, I'm going to mimic this and understand this or learn this and repeat. Or, that person did it this way, that's a big no-no, not going to do that. So I had mentors along the way. I can't even name who the mentors are. And I'll give you an example. I watch movies. I get mentors out of movies.
Out of movies?
Yes. Those characters, what they do, what they play.
Iron Man?
Iron Man?
That
Absolutely.
way, you're so techie, you have every single thing.
Iron Man's got nothing on me.
I look at your drawer, I'm like, I need this type of wire. You're like, I have it. I'm like, where?
Yeah,
and you have every tool for everything.
I do. I'm a techie. So movies, as an example, you look at, you want to start a business, you want to do a job, you want to do something in your career. Look at a villain in a movie. I take lessons from them, even. Of course, you're going to take it from Iron Man or others as well, but I take it from them too. Look how committed they are to what they want to do. They want to get this guy. And they're building every plan that's failing and constantly going after, and they're trying to get this guy. Even whether they fail or not.
Yeah.
But they are solid in their approach. They're committed, right?
They have the most, I think, determination.
Absolutely, the determination. Absolutely, right? So you can learn from anyone. You have to have a mind that is teachable, right? When your ego gets in the way of, I know this, I know that, I never say, I know. I hate that.
I know.
Because when you know,
that
the brain shuts off the ability to learn more. Oh, I already know this, I'm gone. Brain doesn't know, right? So, well, that's fascinating. Let me see if there's another perspective or an angle on this. Let me see if there's something else I can learn out of this. As soon as you do that, curiosity kicks in, and you learn when you're most curious.
Right.
When you're watching a YouTube video or anything else and you're not curious, nothing sinks in. You have to watch it twice or 3 times, right? But the moment you're curious, whether you're reading a book, you're going through that video or that movie, you'll catch things. So when I watch movies even, I'm very curious of what's happening. Not about the plot and what's happening. What are the characters doing? What are their strengths? I remember the documentary Narcos. So Narcos was about Pablo Escobar, one of the biggest gangsters out there. I was fascinated with how he did things, not from an evil perspective, but from a good perspective. How can I learn from this individual because he was successful in his own trait? Mind you, that was drugs and violence and all that, but he was committed. He knew who he was up against. He knew everything about the person he was going to be either talking to, interviewing. He needs things done from them. He knew everything. He did his research. So it's so much fascinating things that you can learn from other people that you can apply to your own life. But you do it for the good. You do it for the right reasons. Right? You do it with your morals. You do it with what you stand for. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what my mystery question is. Question for your next guest. Do I know who it is?
No.
Again, same thing. So I think the question I would ask is, what's the one thing that you're absolutely most grateful for, and why?
That would be like a very nice question to ask. I think I'd start the episode off with a very grateful tone.
Absolutely. I think that's what we talked about today as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we can start finding gratitude in things, life is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Papa, for being on my podcast today. I was super excited about everything that we talked about. And even though I live with you, I think I definitely learned a lot from this episode. And I do hope that all the young leaders who are watching this learned as much as we did.
We can't end a podcast without a hug with your dad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Great job.
Thank you. To everyone tuning in, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And make sure you stay tuned for the next episode.